Marissa Zappas is a perfumer and a scent designer and a poet whose ethereal and nostalgic fragrances blend fantasy, reality, the gothic, and the modern. Her approach to perfumery finds fuel in her background in anthropology, her admiration for avant-garde perfumers, or perfumes, sorry, of the early 20th century. Who am I kidding? I need my glasses. And her collaborations with New York City artists. Marissa believes the perfume, both creating and wearing it, conjures our past, present, and future selves. Her academic work explores the intersection of perfume's history, attitudes towards death, and the history of cemetery construction. While completing her MA and ethnographic training, Marissa also worked at Givaudan and later became an apprentice to master perfumer Olivier Gillotin. Marissa is the co-founder of Gumamina, a side project she created in December of 2023 alongside her friend and fellow independent perfumer Courtney Rafuse of Universal Flowering. That's our intro bio. Marissa, it's a delight to have you on. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Super pleasure. And so I'm just going to start with the basics. Like, where are you from? Where did you grow up? What's your background?
I grew up in primarily Northern California.
Hey, me
Yeah,
too. Where?
Redwood City.
Oh, San Francisco.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
Nice.
So we moved to the Bay Area when I was 4, but I was actually born in Torrance, in Southern California. And then when I was, yeah, I dropped out of high school like any true genius. I'm just kidding. I did drop out of high school. And then I didn't go to college until I was 25. I went to community college in Seattle. Actually, I moved to Seattle when I was like 24. And I, you know, took an English class and wrote an essay on Sylvia Plath. And
Everyone does.
oh, it's like, oh, I'm actually good at school, I guess. And I just got really into it, and I decided that I wanted to um do my bachelor's, and I always kind of had it in me somewhere deep down that I wanted to move to New York. It was um kind of a childhood dream that I had um not made happen, I guess. And so basically I just applied as a transfer student to a bunch of schools in New York City, and the new school gave me a scholarship. And so I went and I loved it. Um, this was in 2011. And I moved to New York with my dog and basically like $200, and I didn't know anyone, and I became very close with one of my professors at the new school, and she really encouraged me to apply for like a BA/MA program.
At the new school or
What?
at the new school?
At the new school, yeah, in anthropology.
Oh, right.
Yeah, and I had studied abroad my second semester there in Paris. It was actually like the only program where it's so cliche, and I really like it was my first time out of the country, and it was the only program where my scholarship would transfer. So because I had a partnership with the American University in Paris, and so I went to Paris, and I wound up just really almost every day I would go to there's a famous cemetery there called Père Lachaise, and so I would just take the train to the metro to Père Lachaise, and um part of the program there in anthropology was to write a mini ethnography on a space. And so I wrote it on the history of Père Lachaise and kind of how it functions today. And it was so interesting in so many ways, and that was sort of the beginning of me like writing about cemeteries and my thesis really. And it was like that so then I came back here, and then I did the master's here. And yeah, I was really interested in this moment during the French Revolution, when perfume became commercialized, because it was really the first time that oil mixed with alcohol had become popular in like this very specific way. And it was also the moment when cemeteries started to be constructed on the peripheries of cities, as opposed to like being private spaces, part of people's backyards and churches. And they had to kind of clean up all those cemeteries, because they were essentially becoming overabundant, and the bodies were like polluting the ground and stuff. So it was both perfume and this kind of move of cemeteries from centers of cities to peripheries were part of what was termed this project of deodorization.
Oh, and is that how you came to perfume, is through deodorization?
Exactly, yeah. I started
Wow.
just learning about the history of commercial perfumery, and I had always really been obsessed with perfume since I was a child.
Can you remember that, like that first moment? I mean, I know it's sort of a cliched perfume question. I'm sorry, but
I don't know.
if I had $1 for every time someone's asked me this question, but like, what's your first sort of, sorry to say it, scent memory
Yeah.
or perfume, awareness? Do you remember?
Yeah, it's hard. I was always like, I was actually diagnosed with sensory processing disorder when I was a child. And so I was like very, very reactive. Like for me, it was more about like texture. I was like my nickname in my family was Rice Girl, because I would only eat rice. And so I just like, but texture specifically in my clothes, the way they felt on me
Oh
and
yeah.
stuff would really like, yeah. So I was all and my dad lives in an area of Southern California where you can grow, and he's Greek, and so he always had fig trees. So I would say that fig trees for sure are like my first real sensory memory.
Hmm.
Like being with him and eating figs and smelling the trees, and just the kind of the Greek food to the melamakarna, like the spice cookies and pistachio nuts, like just sort of the things that he would eat. Um, but it was when and then my grandmother wore Shalimar, and my great grandmother, and I really, that was um, I loved how she smelled. And then my great aunt, I remember, gifted me when I was like 7, this like very angelic sort of old lady, like jasmine fragrance that I loved, and I would spray on my pillow. It was really intense. So I really have had these formative fragrance memories that were very like vintage style.
Pretty, yeah, sophisticated for a 7-year-old, like an angelic jasmine and a Shalimar.
Yeah.
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 Mm.
So, but then, when I turned 10 or 11, I remember I got the cotton candy juice bar fragrance from the drugstore, and I just mostly loved how that bottle looked, but I loved it. And but really, like, I would say the first fragrance that I fell in love with, I was like 12 and a half, and my mom and I were walking through Macy's, and it was the huge campaign for Baby Doll by YSL.
Oh yeah. Okay.
So yeah, and
Yeah.
I had just kind of stopped playing with dolls, and it felt like this sort of sad moment, and I was about to have my bat mitzvah. And so I think I saw that perfume, and I was like, it was like a way for me to kind of hold on to,
Yeah.
my childhood, my girlhood. And so I remember I was given that perfume as a gift for my bat mitzvah. And that,
Wow.
yeah. And I went through like a few bottles of that, I think. Um, and then I was like 18 or something, and I was at party and there was this girl and she was so chic and like beautiful and she smelled amazing and I asked her what she was wearing and it was like Ralph Lauren blue for women. So I wore that for a couple of years. Um, and then God, what else? Oh, and then when I moved to Seattle, there's like the Nordstrom flagship store there. So they had the l'exclusifs Chanel.
Uh,
Um, and at that, I feel like now you can find that
yeah.
it's like pretty everywhere, but like it was really
It
rare.
wasn't at the time, right? And what are we talking about here? Like what year's sort of
This was
era?
2010.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's still
So
sort of exclusive.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And I remember like every day I would walk into that Nordstrom and spray. It was Chanel number 18. And it's sort of this like pickly rose that has it some ambrette and some musks that are really beautiful and sort of like there's a cumin note too, which is sort of surprising and it's a little bit animalic and it just wasn't it was more interesting than anything really I had smelled before and I I just had to have that perfume and so the day before I left Seattle for New York I had done this weird modeling job so I could afford this bottle and I bought it and I took it with me to New York City and it's like I still have like a little bit from that bottle left and it's like whenever that for me it marked such a visceral um moment of like first arriving in New York City and all of the smells of New York City and all of the feelings of just being in this like insane place
Yeah.
and feeling like scared but also like excited and yeah it's such a that perfume really takes me back in a and also it's like not so far back like Baby Doll that it just yeah so
Yeah.
I still love that perfume so much it's just was very
Like
important
a hopeful perfume for a hopeful time, right?
yeah
Yeah.
so
So to get back, sorry to switch gears a bit, to get back to the cemetery, the Père Lachaise. So is there, I don't know if everybody in the call has experienced this remarkable cemetery. I have, and I'm just going to share just an image from it because it's just so I mean, this is just one picture, but this is kind of what it is, you know? Um, so Marissa, I'm a little curious what it was about. So you talked about deodorization and the history of sort of deodorizing cities that coincided with the revolution and perfume as an industry. Like, how did that all sort of metastasize into this decision to work with fragrance? Because I mean, a lot of people would have those interests and then be like, cool, but
yeah
you didn't. You did something with it. So tell us a little bit about that, if you don't mind.
yeah well it definitely wasn't like I didn't know what I was doing. Like I just was sort of trying to go from small points. Yeah, so basically like I finished my master's. I was applying for PhD programs, but for the last 6 months of my master's, I got a it was a temp job at Givaudan, um, and as a receptionist.
In New York?
In New York, yeah, on 52nd
Wow.
Street. Yeah. And it was like I kind of went into it, from like a little bit removed. Like I was like, I'm an anthropologist, like I'm not, this isn't my industry. Like I'm just kind of, you know, trying to make a little extra money, whatever. And I just pretty much immediately fell in love with it. Like, I fell in love with the industry. I fell in love with the process. I honestly fell in love with like the building on 57th Street itself. It was just I had never worked in a corporate environment before. I learned it wasn't for me long term. But like it was just a very sort of magical experience and I would just sit at the front desk and like, I they if you've ever been in, I mean, I'm sure you have, but like part of the development process is they test the perfume on skin. And so people who work in in these corporate offices, like you always have they always have stickers on their skin, and they spray different perfume on each sticker, and like, you test it. So I was always like the skin. And I would just stand there at the front desk like this and have these perfumers like smelling my arms. And it was just so fun. And so it's sort of complicated, and there are a lot of different ways to becoming a perfumer, and not really like within these companies, but at Giv at the time, it was kind of, things were being restructured. And essentially for many, many years, most perfumers would have an apprentice who they would also take the time to train. And you would learn the raw materials with, your perfumer, and you would also like compound their formulas. So you would compound, and as you're pouring, like, you're like, oh, for balsam, absolute, like, I'm going to smell it, and then pour, like, you smell as you pour. And but I would say most perfumers today don't work that way. They just have a technician who does their formulas, and they don't necessarily want to be involved in that process.
That matches my experience, indeed.
Yeah.
But so you were actually interacting with the materials kind of constantly, it sounds like.
Well, I mean, so
you were being exposed constantly.
When I was working as a receptionist, it was mostly like with evaluators, like they were evaluating the scents on my arms, and sometimes perfumers too. But then basically what happened was, right after I graduated, there was an opening to work in the lab as an apprentice to essentially what was the last remaining perfumer who worked this way.
Wow.
And yeah, his name, and that was Olivier, and he is since retired. I was really his last apprentice.
Wow.
Yeah, and he knew that he was very interested in the fact that I was like writing about perfume in cemeteries, and we had a good rapport. And he was like, if you want this job, like, it's yours.
Cool.
And it was truly kismet. I essentially, like, 2 weeks later, I just jumped in the lab and started working for him, and no background in chemistry whatsoever. I was, you don't get paid a lot. It was like 2,000 a month, or like, it was like nothing.
In New York.
And in New York, it was like, it was hard. Like, it sounds, and it was in a lot of ways like a dream come true. And I mean, it was like, and I took it like, I took it so seriously. So, you're supposed to arrive at work between 8 and 9. You can clocking out as like flexible. I was turning the lights on in that building every morning at 5 a.m. And blind smelling the raw materials and memorizing them. And then, Olivier would come in, and we would have a meeting in the morning, and then he would quiz me later in the afternoon. And I learned all the naturals. And I got like I took it really seriously.
Yeah.
And I spent my weekends blind smelling like at home. I made kits and stuff for 2.5 years. And I was learning accords as well. And I towards the end of my time there, I was reconstructing Paris, the original Paris formula by YSL, just by blind smelling it. And so I would basically ask, I would have to guess what was in it. And so
then he would check your work, like he was invested in this.
He would look at the formula. He would tell me if it was in it, and so yeah, it was really. And I think so, normally, like, prior to this, like, normally you kind of learn some of the naturals, and the tests that they give you prior to going to the internal school are like, they're not necessarily the tests. Like, I was given tests that they were given in the school, basically. But to get into the school, they give you differentiation type tests. So like, these two are Mandarin, like 2 would be like two blotters would be like mandarin, like maybe green and yellow, and then one would be like grapefruit, and you have to like point to the one that's different or something, like those
Okay.
types of olfactive
Yeah.
tests.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was complicated why I didn't go to the internal school for a lot of reasons that I can get into, but fundamentally, like my father also passed away.
Ah,
Like
life got
right
in
as
the
I
way.
was, yeah, and I was 30, which is the oldest that is very old for them to send someone.
Right.
It was also, you know, whatever. I don't know if legally I'm allowed to talk about it, but I didn't go. I instead basically left the company. I remained very close to Olivier like all these years, and other people who work there too. It just, I think I also, I had a lot of friends who were like in design and art mostly, and they wanted to do these types of collaborations with me, which like I wouldn't have been able to necessarily do had I stayed. So there was just like
Yeah.
a lot on the other side. And I remember like the week before I put in my 2 weeks, like Olivier said to me, he looked at me and he just said, like, if I could go back, um, I would do it differently. And also someone with your passion can make more of an impact on the industry, like from the outside
Totally.
versus the inside. Um,
Totally.
and so I guess I just felt like with the small amount of money that my dad had left me and Olivier's support, like I felt like I was sort of able to do it. And it took me a while. I mean, I left Giv in 2017 and I didn't really have my business until 2020. It wasn't even and my business is just like it's changed so much. It's and anyway, I like to say that I'm kind of like partially classically taught and then also self-taught, but I also think every perfumer, even commercial perfumers, are self-taught because you have to teach yourself, you have to be self-motivated to learn, otherwise because there are just so many new raw materials and molecules all
Words.
the
Yeah.
time, and so it's really like kind of a never-ending thing. But I basically set up like a little lab in my apartment, and just like continued. So
So at what point did so you set up a little lab and it sounds like this was COVID time, right? 2020 when you finally
yeah,
launched. Yeah.
yeah.
So what sort of allowed you to transition from setting up a little lab to, I guess, let me rephrase that. Like, how did you go about launching this as a brand? And did you have it in mind as a brand or did you have it in mind more as an arts practice or like sort of what were the initial impulses towards that?
Yeah, well, I actually originally when I left Jiv, I had it in mind as a brand, and Olivier and I had written 3 formulas together.
Hmm.
Um, and I was gonna basically like launch those three like with him and get the oil from Jiv and do
So
that.
he was going to be the co-perfumer with you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, just for the initial first three. And which was so generous of him to like we really spent a lot of time on these formulas together.
Yeah.
And what wound up, and because basically I had a professor who had this kind of archival project. It was sort of like a Wikipedia of just biographies of overlooked women from history. And I was like, what if I used some of these biographies and did like olfactive portraits?
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, so that's initially what I intended to do. And if you go on my website, like Queen Zinga, Qingxi, and La Divina were part of the Rediments collection. I changed Qingxi and La Divina. Those are no longer Givaudan formulas, like those are mine. But
Uh-huh.
I was so attached to Queen Zinga that I just kept that. Um, so those three were originally the Rediments collection, and Rediments comes from the word redimency, which means the act of loving in return, and it was like the idea of an homage. So that's what it was going to be like my brand. And then I just started doing all these one-off like projects because like people would like my best friend in 20
Artist friends, right?
artist
Artist
friends were
friends.
like,
Ah,
let's
I
do
know
this.
him well. They're like, hey,
Yeah, and I didn't really know how to say no at that
of
point of my
course.
life.
I also know that well.
Yeah. So So I just wound up doing all these like random one-off products that then I was kind of like, how do I sell? And then I essentially just decided to put them all under one brand, which like just my first and last name. So that's what it is now. And there's no,
I'll share your site just so people have a sense of what's going on here. So you
yeah,
said Queen Zinga, La Divina, and what was the third?
Qingxi.
Qingxi. Here we go.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So what were like some of the first artist collaborations that you remember from that time?
Yeah. Well, my best friend is an astrologer. So
Ooh.
yes,
Ooh, probably.
Annabelle,
What's your sign? Sorry, California.
we're actually so we're born one day apart and we're both Aries.
Oh,
So yeah.
nice.
Um
Sorry, everybody. Northern California girls.
so I mean, she and I have like very different taste and stuff, but she was just like, I want to do a birthday cake perfume. And I was like, no. I was like, Annabelle, that's like I don't want to do a birthday cake perfume. And she's like, no, we have to do a birthday cake perfume and it has to smell like X, Y, and Z and like, and basically I just said yes because she somehow
Because
outbosses
she's
me.
a bloody Aries, man.
She's,
You
I
can't
mean,
say no to an Aries.
I'm an Aries too, but she really bosses me around. And and I listened to her. And so I just did it and she really like put everything she had into the marketing and the promotion of Annabelle's birthday cake. And it, I would say like I love working with I love working with people and I love working with artists because they always like push me to do things that I wouldn't normally do,
Hmm.
or give me feedback that like I wouldn't necessarily think of myself. So Annabelle's birthday cake is my top seller. And it's a perfume that I'm really proud of. And it's, a lot of people have a lot of things to say about it. I've learned to love everything that people say. And
By a lot of people have a lot of things to say. Are you talking about critique or like interpretations or
yeah,
all of
yeah,
the above? Yeah.
all of the above. Yeah. Yeah. So I feel like Annabelle's birthday cake is the perfume that a lot of people kind of know me for.
Or yeah.
It really is like a high percentage of my sales. So, yeah, Annabelle is definitely actually no, before Annabelle there was Rachel Rapid White, Corn Carnival, that perfume, but that perfume didn't stay on my site.
I
That
see.
didn't become part of my permanent collection.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
yeah,
on the topic of sort of people saying a lot of things, so critique. I mean, being a creative person in the public sphere subjects you or delights you with the opportunity to get criticized, right? That's something that happens, and I think no one more so than perfumers because a lot of people are so intensely invested in scent. It's such a personal thing. Blah blah blah.
yeah.
How do you deal with that? Like, what's the worst thing you've had to contend with in that regard in terms of sort of challenging yourself to accept criticism? And if it makes you feel better, I have my own that I'll share if you want solidarity in that. But like, what's the thing that has like gotten you there, and how did you get past it? I guess.
I think some of the reviews of Annabelle's birthday cake, like I just don't really read for Grantica anymore, but some of them were quite mean. And in the beginning, it was just like me in my apartment making my perfume,
Mm.
filling each bottle by hand, like trying to pay my
And then they're like, she sucks.
yeah. People were like, it's disgusting, blah blah. And I was
Unbelievable.
so it was just, but I do think, I'm working on a perfume now for I'm doing a collaboration with an artist and I feel really proud of it. And she's um well, I've disclosed this before, but I'm working on a collaboration with Miranda July. And something that she said to me, like when I was sending her the earlier sample, she was like, it's really funny because she was like, I just can't really respond without a visceral reaction. Like it's like she was like, it's just an interesting medium because like you can't really like give feedback. It's hard to give feedback like more neutrally.
Yeah.
And
that is unique to perfume. I mean, it is something that is, even those of us who have worked in it for a spell, like you still get that like embodied response, you know?
really,
Yeah.
yeah. And I think at this point, I feel like, if somebody doesn't like what I've made, that's okay. They can feel disgusted by it, and that's just, part of being alive. And I basically just don't take things personally anymore. Or I try really, I don't really, but it's hard. I think during my rebrand, there was some feedback that people didn't like my bottles. And like to this day, I still get people DMing me asking me if I have any of my old bottles. And I'm like, no,
No.
I don't. Um, but and I guess people were like expected something less, like people were describing them as like coquette or something. And for me, it was like I put a lot of thought, I put a lot of time into those bottles. Like when I was working at when I was going to the new school during my undergrad, I worked part-time as a shop girl at a Neat Goutal. And a Neat Goutal is like one of my greatest inspirations, like her collection, her design. And so my bottles were inspired by the old Annick Goutal bottles. Like, and
Mhm.
you can tell they have the bow around the neck, and it's a ribbed bottle. But I think there was some disappointment around my new bottles. But again, it's just one of those things that um
And these are the bottles for folks who didn't see
yeah,
it the first time. Sorry, I don't know, my screen's so tiny, but yeah. Yeah, they're actually quite, they're quite classic, aren't they? I like it a lot, actually.
they're quite
Really,
classic.
yeah.
Yeah,
But I mean, it's also like, in fairness, like perfumery is, I mean, I know it's an art form. I know we're pushing the medium, yada, yada. But, at the end of the day, if you have a brand and you're selling a perfume, like it's okay to reference something pretty and classic in that way. Don't you think? I mean, I think so. I guess you do too, but
I think so too, but I do think there are a lot of people who are interested in what I do, who kind of like are coming at it from a more avant-garde perspective.
right, right, right,
And
right,
it's like
right.
at the end of the day, my perfumes, like even though Annabelle's birthday cake has like a latex note, like they're not for people who like crazy, like funky, like more avant-garde. Like they're just not. My perfumes fundamentally are like classic in structure and like pretty like easy to wear.
Yeah.
So, but I and my friend and Courtney actually, like we always joke about this because she like her kind of like branding and stuff is very it's more like minimal. It's like sort of chic. And like my like if my Instagram is just like it, maybe I feel like sometimes maybe my perfumes seem edgier than really like they are when you smell them, but like for her it's sort of the
Because
opposite.
of the names, maybe, or what do you?
Yeah, I guess because of the names. And like there was like a big article in, I forget, some magazine a couple years ago about like kind of like disgusting perfumes, like, and
Mm-hmm.
talked about like the latex note in Annabelle's birthday cake and stuff. And so I think sometimes I get like people think that I'm edgier than I am,
Mm-hmm.
you
And
know.
and just for reference for everyone, by Courtney, you're talking about Courtney Rafuse of Universal Flowering, correct?
Exactly, yeah.
And the collaboration you guys have together is, and I'm going to screen share because I'm so on it today. This is Universal Flowering, and then
Yeah.
the project you have together is this one. And actually, in the chat, someone asked about these swan caps. So how did this come about? This and Odile Odette. This is from the Swan Lake, correct? The ballet is that?
Yes,
Yeah. Okay.
exactly.
Or
Mhm.
I guess the story that turned into a ballet.
Yes,
Can you
yes.
tell us a little bit about this project and sort of how it came about?
Sure. Courtney and I just sort of connected organically, like online, around during the pandemic when we were both for us, like we're similar age and we're kind of doing very similar things. And so we would encounter a lot of the same problems. And we were just kind of watching our businesses like surprising to us surprisingly grow. And we were
Succeeding,
like,
yeah.
how do we kind of navigate this? And so we would share and we would talk on the phone and just share what we knew. And we kind of were like, and then we just became fairly close friends. um And we just were like, what if we did a project where we just like didn't give a fuck about, and it was just like purely for our pleasure and our joy. Like we make the price what we want it to be. We just do exactly what we want, and like no timeline, none of these things that normally like stress us out.
Yeah.
And just to kind of get back to that feeling of inspiration again, because it is true. Like when you turn your passion into your business, it really has a way of
Mm-hmm.
like kind of, yeah, making, yeah,
At its worst, it can sap the passion, right? At its worst.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we were, yeah, so we were just basically trying to get inspired again. And we did, it worked. It was like so fun. And, you know, I feel so proud. We both like feel so proud of these perfumes. And, you know, when I was at Giv, like the perfumers would constantly like, nope, there's not a single formula that hasn't had like at least 2 or 3 perfumers' eyes on it. Like
Oh,
they're
of
all
course. Yeah.
looking at it and helping each other. And like, you know, so to work by myself, even as even a beginner perfumer, like it was just, anyway, what I'm saying is that like working with her, I would basically like write a formula, or she would write one. Like she started Odette, I started Odile, and then we swapped, and then she
Cool.
edited it, I edited it, we back and forth a few times. And it's like the best formulas I think either of us have ever written, because we did them together. Um, and it was just it was a really beautiful project. And it was also just like we learned, you know, like I've learned all of, like I live for working with divas, you know, like I love working with women. I love working with difficult women. It's like part of my practice. But it's hard, and there are just things you have to know, and there are boundaries you have to set, and there are just, but with Courtney, it was like it wasn't hard at all, and we just worked so well together. And so like we opened an LLC last year, Gumamina, we like have a bank account, and she's like my husband, you know. So but it is hard to collaborate. end of
Yeah.
End of story. Like it is always, there are always challenges. But Courtney has been kind of a particularly easy person for me to work with.
So what happens when a collaboration goes wrong? Oh, well, I guess, I mean,
Yeah.
maybe we don't want to go there. Let's ask a more general question. Are there any epic failures that you've encountered that you sort of, can you guys hear me? My earphones just went weird. You can hear me? Yes. Okay. Thank you. Um, Thank you guys. Have there been any failures that you can recall, or things that you're like, wow, I really fucked that up, you know, that you feel like sharing? And I try to ask people this because it's the reality of being an artist or a creative person, is you fail all the time, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I think there have been a couple collaborations where it was ruining the friendship. And so, you know, we did like a buyout. I just like, you know, and that was it. And we're perfect now. Like it
Yeah.
really did save the friendship. So, um, but I would say like my biggest, gonna sound so corny, but like I really think the thing that's held me back or really been the hardest in my career is just kind of not necessarily believing in myself or caring too much about what other people think. Um, and
Yeah.
yeah,
I can
so,
relate.
and I wish that, and I also think, you know, perfumer, probably not as much right now for people, but especially where I came from Jiv, like it's this very like secret kind of sacred kind of like highbrow, like there was just a lot of like you I really didn't think that I could be a perfumer unless I was there, and unless like certain things happened. And I um I guess like if I could tell people who are interested in perfumery who are listening to this like what I've really learned, it would just be like to not take no for an answer. And there are so many ways to become to becoming a perfumer. There are endless, endless ways. And it's just, yeah. And I didn't really believe that myself for a long time.
You kind of had to detrain your brain, huh?
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
yeah. Katie's curious about how your background in anthropology shapes your perfumery. And Katie is currently an undergrad anthropology major. Care to field that?
Yeah, I think I guess I would say it helps me kind of like zoom out sometimes. I think having my own business, like I get really caught up in the day to day and the frustrations of the day to day, but kind of anthropology makes you like it's that perspective has helped me kind of just look at the bigger picture in terms of where I am, but also I think I don't know, part of what I was specifically interested in anthropology was like magical thought, but animism and like this idea that the raw materials themselves have spiritual properties, like all of these things. So I think I always work from like I always start at least a perfume from uh, a spiritual place.
Hmm. What
And
does that mean for you, spiritual?
um
Sorry, now we're getting to the hard questions, right?
yeah, you're like, what does spiritual mean?
What is God?
Yeah. Yeah. Um, I think it's like for me where there's something to really explore. Like there's something unknown that I need to kind of grasp and like live with in my skin or it's like for so long. I mean, I think another one of my perfumes has been in well, a couple of my perfumes have been inspired by Elizabeth Taylor. And
Yeah, like including the marvelously named Maggie the cat is alive, I'm alive.
yeah,
What, I mean, what the heck? That name is phenomenal.
thank you.
That's a quote, right?
It is, yeah.
Okay.
The full quote is Maggie the cat is alive, I'm alive. Why are you afraid of the truth? Um, so I actually wanted it to be that whole thing. But
But the bottle was too small.
it's already like the font is too small on the label, but that's another story. So yeah, I think it's usually like I mean it is fortunately and unfortunately like an art practice for me. So whatever I'm kind of moving through is like what the fragrance will be about. And it doesn't necessarily have to be like personal full disclosure, but like there is some component, at least the perfumes in my collection have all been
Mhm.
directly kind of tied to emotional states that I've or things that I've kind of worked through like spiritually. So yeah, like I left New York City a few months ago and I'm like living out in, by the ocean and like I'm just kind of like there's just willow trees in the backyard and I was like, what
Wow.
if I just launched a perfume called Willow or something? Like my brain is just not as I'm not thinking as intellectually about things that's just so I do think my next perfume will be kind of like more naturalistic and more inspired directly by nature or something
Huh.
because that's just where I am right now and
Yeah.
I'm kind of sick of like thinking so deeply about things.
I mean, it seems more than fair that your curiosities, I mean, I feel like most creative people I know, like their curiosities are what informs their work. I mean, how can we
Yeah,
avoid that? It's
yeah.
part of the beast. Um, Let me just make sure I'm catching up on the chat questions. And I'm liking them so you guys know that I'm getting them and I will bring them up at appropriate moments. Elizabeth wants to know if there's any advice for new perfumers. Elizabeth is unreleased and shy.
Hi, Elizabeth.
You can do it.
I think the thing that Olivier always used to tell me was just smell everything, just smell everything and try and make if you're walking down the street and you just try to make smell in general more of like a conscious thing. And try and memorize as many smells as you can. And yeah, just like get your nose on as many materials as possible. And also just honestly like have fun with it. like just have fun with it. That's the whole point. Um, yeah. And, take classes if you can, obviously. I mean, perfume is just so expensive to try and study on one's own, I think, but like just do the best you can. If you order raw materials and wind up like filling up your fridge with them or, that's fine. Just, yeah, smell
But
as much
don't.
as possible.
Great, thank you. So also, Paula Morales is asking if there's a way to read about your writings, or if you've written on the crossroads of animism, spirituality, perfumery, etc. Have you? Or published, I guess is
I actually, well, I have a Substack that I've been writing on. It's been really fun for me and amazing. But I recently found my thesis like printed out. So I was going to put that on my Substack, and I mean it's quite long. But yeah, if you subscribe, stay tuned, maybe.
And what's is there an address for that? Or sorry, I'm too Gen X for Substack.
No, it's okay. It's I understand. It's just I think at my first and last name.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, well, you guys can figure that out. I'm not going to put that in the chat. Oh, thank you, Danielle. What an angel. Thank you, Danielle. I like the commitment to fun. I think that's really cool. I think that's
Yeah, I mean it's perfumery,
yeah, like
I'm
yeah,
sorry. Yeah.
seriously, people.
Yeah.
So let me ask you about a couple of other things. So you've done some collaborations with artists. We talked about this a little bit, but something that struck me or sort of spoke to me, at least visually, I haven't had a chance to smell the perfume, unfortunately, is the artist The Pink Bedroom by
Yeah, of course.
Portia Munson. Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about how you went about interpreting that in smell? And just for context, folks, I'm going to share an image because this thing is cuckoo bananas. What is going on here? Incredible.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about this if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure. So, Portia, um, I came across her work like, I don't know, 10 years ago, maybe. She originally the Pink Bedroom, I think it was at the New Museum in like the 90s. She's been doing this a long time. And um she had another, it was like the Bound Angel or something. And I just loved her work. And it was like, I think it was 2016 or 2017. Like I didn't have any type of following on social media or anything, but I just DM'd her and I said, "Hi Portia, like you don't know me, but I would like if you ever want a perfume related to your work, like let me know." It was like very bold of me, and um yeah,
Is
and
this is this the work? Sorry, I just want to make sure. So for people to get some context, is that Bound Angel?
that's Bound Angel,
Okay,
yeah.
yeah, pretty cool.
She just binds up these angels.
Oh, I see. Wow, look at that, guys.
Yeah.
That is cool.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. So
Emailed her.
I sent her this message and then she responded like it was like 6 years later. Like I mean, it was 2023. So she basically like, she's been doing this work for a long time and like didn't necessarily have a ton of recognition. And then the Museum of Sex decided they were going to put the Pink Bedroom on display. And it was, I think, opening January 23rd, 2023. She messaged me back. It was like January 6th or something. And she was like, "Yeah, that sounds great, Marissa." And I was like,
What?
okay.
And I
And
like it next week.
yeah, exactly. Like it was just sort of crazy. But at that point in my career, like I didn't really have so much going on. Like I basically did kind of drop everything and she was like, do whatever you want, keep all the money, like let's just make it happen. I think it would be fun. And she's just so great. And so I just, I wanted it to smell, pink, like some type of artificial strawberry, cherry. and also plasticky and also powdery, just kind of all of the haunting girlhood smells that we have. And I wanted it to just to smell good, but also just it's a little unnerving. Like
Yeah,
the
yeah.
scene is like, there are also like random um uh like pregnancy tests. Like it's like not the most, it's cool, but it is like a little creepy when you're walking through it.
Well, I mean, and it's a little creepy looking at it because
Yeah,
all these stuffed animals looking at you and everything's the same hue as pink. It
yeah,
almost feels like you're going to be suffocated by the girliness. You know what I mean?
totally.
Like
Yeah.
when sugar becomes a cavity or, yeah, it's cool. So how did you translate that in smell? Like what were the unnerving notes that you put in the perfume?
It was really just sort of like a plasticky rose.
Oh, got it. Yeah.
Yeah, like a powdery, plasticky rose with like a strawberry note. And the thing I like about oils is like they, I just feel like a good oil should kind of hit you over the head with what it is, and not necessarily like I like personally, like I like perfume oils to be a little more one-dimensional because I think the way they melt into like skin will bring it alive.
Yeah.
And a lot of complexity just gets inherently lost. So, um, and I'm always surprised when someone's wearing pink bedroom. I'm always like, wow, you smell so good. What are you wearing? Like I
Like I did that.
I don't recognize it. And
That
it's,
happens sometimes, right? You make a
yeah,
piece and then you forget about it, and then you're like, wow, that's really good. And you're like, oh shit, it's mine. What a
yeah,
nice moment. What a nice moment to have.
yeah. So that happens a lot with that fragrance, and it does wear really well. It just wears like a really nice rose.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the story with that. And then I had my first there was like a New York Times profile on it, which was like so
Amazing.
exciting for me. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was a really special project, and she was just really supportive too.
I actually remember that New York Times article.
Yeah.
Because, every time an article comes out, everybody sends it to me. I'm sure you have the same thing. Everyone's like, have you read? Have you read? And you're like, yep. But I
Yeah.
remember it. And I was like, wow, go Marissa. I was like, it was a good article.
Thank you.
A couple folks have asked sort of variations on a theme, which is the balance between being an artist and being in commercial practice. So, one is how do you balance your art practice and running a business, and the other is how do you balance artistic expression and commercial demands. So, do you have anything to say on in that regard, sort of that juxtaposition, or if you see it as a duality, or?
Yeah, I think there are kind of a lot of things that I do personally to keep myself like afloat. Like I don't um because I just can't work. Like I just can't write a formula if I don't feel any type of inspiration. Like it's just I just can't. Even for clients. So, I take a lot of breaks. Like I don't work like actually like that much. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I need a lot of time to kind of like feel inspired and think, and I that was a huge shift because when I was living in New York and I first had my business, I was just working 7 days a week, like constantly, all the time. I was never off. I was responding to emails within like minutes. Like it was like, because yeah, I had so much skin in the game, and I still do. It's just like I really had to learn to just be able to step back a little. And I mean I still like will respond to emails and stuff, but I probably only work like a few days a week, and that's just really important for my and I'm so fortunate that now I can like afford to do that.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I work like long days when I do work, and I work at odd hours too, so it's like I don't really know how much I work and how much I don't work, but I just know that I'm like a lot of creative people, like we just need a lot of time to do nothing, and that's just kind of part of how.
Like literally let the brain, you know,
Yeah,
do its creative thing. I mean, yeah, there are weeks where I don't have a moment to myself, and then there are weeks where I have a day off and I start getting ideas, and I'm like, oh, what's that feeling? It's an idea. You
yeah,
need the time, right? Like, And it's so hard to carve out in our society and capitalism, so.
Yeah.
If somebody wants, you have a truther, you have a honey rose truther in the audience, and honey rose truther, Sul Muse says, I think this is a loaded question. How do you feel about bringing back old scents?
Oh, I mean, honestly, I would. I just like it's almost like oh yeah, honey rose. I wish that I could have all my perfumes part of my collection like right now. Every single one I've done, smoked jasmine black tea, like I really wish that I could, but I just kind of like had to make some choices and look at what wasn't selling really.
Mm,
And yeah, I think so in the beginning I was doing kind of individual orders and people could special order like if they sold one in honey rose or smoked jasmine or whore or something like which was a perfume that I did. Um I could like do those, but
you got a heart.
heart for heart for whore. Um um but I don't have the time anymore and I hate kind of saying no to people, but yeah,
You
I will
got to protect
say,
yourself.
yeah. I mean, I think like like I don't know. I'm working on a perfume right now that's very honey forward, and so I think and the honey component is a very similar component to honey that was in honey rose too. So keep your eyes on the watch this space. So maybe next year like it'll come out. But I was basically hired to do 20 formulas by a single client for a collection that she's launching a couple years ago. So that's why I haven't really launched anything new recently.
That's a lot of work, actually. 20 formulas was so sort of on that topic and kind of as a segue to the fact that this interview will be wrapping to close soon. Madison asks, do you ever struggle with knowing when a formula is finished? Is there a moment of surrender or does the stopping point usually come naturally?
Um, I I think it really depends. Sometimes it comes naturally and I'm just like, that's it. I'm done. Sometimes I really have to kind of just like walk away, but I'm getting much better at kind of throwing in the towel. I think it's just different for each formula, like the ending process. It also just like if there's a deadline, that will tell you when you have to stop. So, um, if there's not a deadline, like I could just work on something forever.
Oh my gosh, yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. Has there ever been a point where you've sort of made something, you put it out, and then you've revisited a year later and been like, oh, dang, I made a mistake or something like that?
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah.
What do
And
you
there
do in
are,
those instances? Do you,
there are a couple perfumes honestly in my collection where I'm like, I would change that, but I think I don't know, and maybe I just need to not care, but people like really have become so attached to what is already,
yeah,
so I wouldn't want to like I reformulated one fragrance and it was Lilac Dream that's now Dream Sequence and it's actually mo way more expensive now than it used to be. So people like sometimes I just reformulate because like I think it could be better.
yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah,
I mean, the public nature of your work means that there's going to be people who are like,
right.
yeah. Well, Marissa, I feel like there's like another hour of conversation probably 5 to be had, but in the interest of letting you go to dinner because you're on the East Coast and it's 7 o'clock, I want to thank you for taking the time to chat with me about your work and mainly, Marissa, just to wish you Godspeed and good luck and like I hope that there's 5 more New York Times articles in your near future.
Thank you.
Yeah.
They're not usually the best articles, but
No, but it's the New
I
York Bloody Times, man.
Mom
Take
always
it.
frames them. Thank you
Yeah,
guys so much too for having me and being even interested in what I have to say. So
hugely so. Yeah, a pleasure.